A case unique in criminal history that would create global fascination.
Another serial killer is in the news. This killer does not fit the typical profile.
6 men shot in cold blood.
She was a danger to any man she picked up on the highway.
A brutal killer stalks the state of Florida.
Hey, you want to help me make some money?
I really feel she was evil. One of the most evil people I've ever been around.
Highway hooker turns serial killer.
She hated men. That's exactly why she killed.
Made it real easy to pull the trigger.
This is the remarkable story of the investigation into the world's most infamous female killer.
She was more of an animal. She frankly needed to be put down.
I'll be up in heaven while y'all rotting in hell.
Daytona, Florida's most famous beach and a magnet for holidaymakers and America's retired. As the 1980s draw to a close, a dark cloud is brewing over the Sunshine State. December the 1st, 1989. Police recover an abandoned vehicle. The car has been stripped of ID and wiped clean of prints. The owner is missing. Lieutenant Steve Binniger is initially unconcerned.
A lot of people go missing in this state because it's a very transient state. I mean, the state of Florida attracts people from literally worldwide.
A gruesome discovery 5 miles away from the abandoned car plunges detectives into a murder investigation. Police struggle to identify the corpse.
Decomposition takes place pretty fast in Florida with the humid weather and the heat and everything. And with the animal activity, also the bug activity.
Senior crime lab analyst Merv Stevens is familiar with the difficult process of identifying bodies.
A lot of times the performing doctor will go ahead and remove the hands, send them to a crime laboratory, and then I may have a day or two to work on them. It's a very tedious process, something that we don't look forward to doing, but somebody has to do it.
From the fingerprints, police identify the victim as divorced electrician Richard Mallory, shot 4 times with a .22 caliber pistol.
What are you doing?
Mallory was on his way to Daytona when he was shot and robbed, but for items of little value. Detective Brian Jarvis tries to work out a motive for the murder.
When you're doing a criminal investigation, you look at every possibility you can so you don't miss something.
But police have little to go on, and the trail goes cold. Then, 3 murders in 3 months. Divorcee David Spears. Soon-to-be-married Charles Carskadden. And family man Troy Burris. Investigators notice a chilling similarity in each of the killings.
Each of these cases involved somebody being killed with a .22 caliber, which is typically more of a woman's gun. People don't usually use a .22 caliber gun to do murders, and yet we have 3 of them right in Central Florida.
It's not a powerful weapon and is usually used for self-defense. The same small caliber gun was used to kill Richard Mallory, and there is a similar pattern to all 4 murders.
They were in a vehicle. They were white. They were male, my age or even just a little bit younger.
The seats in the vehicles were pulled to their forwardmost position, and that would be a common thread, which is a little unusual.
But as police begin to make the connections between these murders, a killer continues to stalk Florida's highways.
Come on in.
Retired police chief Charles Humphreys is on his way home to his wife of 35 years when he stops to pick up a hitchhiker.
If you want money, I've got money.
With a fifth man lying dead, police are rocked by the realization they are hunting a serial killer. A task force is set up to analyze the murders and draw up a profile of the killer.
What kind of person could get close enough to all of the victims to perpetuate this crime?
All the particulars to the individual crimes were discussed. There was a timeline set up for all the individual victims' time of death and items that had been found.
Forensic investigator Ward Schwab is part of the team looking for patterns that could unmask the killer.
That's when the linkages actually started forming for me. Condition of the victims' bodies led investigators to speculate that it might be a murder by a prostitute or someone that was out commissioning for sex.
Where there were some partial nudity of the victim, plus there were some evidence of discarded condoms.
Something extraordinary begins to dawn on the task force. Could it be that the serial killer they need to catch is a woman?
Get out of the car!
5 men shot. Their bodies and cars scattered across Florida's interstates.
Just move now.
County detectives believe they have a highly unusual case on their hands. They suspect the killer they are looking for is female, soliciting along the highways to get close to the men she robs and murders.
There was no other documented female serial killers that we could think of. You wonder, how do they act as compared to a male serial killer?
The 5th and latest victim is retired police chief Charles Humphreys, who was returning home from his job as a child welfare officer.
When we examined the body further at autopsy, it looked like he had actually been spinning and was being shot as he was turning, like he was trying to get away.
The painstaking search for clues at Florida's Central Crime Lab is frustrated by the killer's attention to detail. Lab analyst Merv Stevens processes the evidence in the hope of finding a single print.
The individual that was committing this crime was very methodical as far as trying to wipe down all the evidence that they knew possible that may lead the crime scene back to them.
Frustrated by the lack of evidence to move the case on, unsolved crime files are reopened in a bid to try and find a lead. The case of missing missionary Peter Seams stands out.
Peter Sims was a middle-aged man traveling alone on Florida's interstate.
Investigators discover that Seams' abandoned car was found not far from where the 4 other victims' vehicles were dumped.
We felt there could be a very good connection here between Peter Sims' vehicle and the other homicides that were occurring. Other cars had been wiped clean, other vehicles had their license plates removed, and every other vehicle had the seat pulled forward.
But with the Seams case, there's one crucial difference. The missing man's car has been crashed, and there is a vital piece of evidence inside. A bloody palm print.
The palm print being made in blood makes it a very fragile type of print. If you start moving around too much, the print will actually almost just fall to pieces.
It's the first definite clue for the investigators.
I theorized that she had touched her forehead and noticed that she had some blood. In grabbing the armrest to release the door handle is where the palm print was found. And unless you take the armrest off, you wouldn't see the palm print.
Finding the killer's print is a major break. Merv Stevens works on the critical job of analysis. But the Seams case has provided another vital lead. The police have an eyewitness account from a local resident who was close to Seams' car on the day it was crashed and then dumped.
There were a couple people outside of her house using her hose. She noticed they had blood on them, and they were rinsing the blood off.
Detectives are staggered. A whole new twist is added to the investigation. The sketch, based on the eyewitness's account, shows not one, but two female suspects. Do investigators now have two serial killers on their hands?
It was overwhelming. I can remember my first thought is, what do we do next?
But detectives have little time to think before another body is discovered.
Normally with a body dump, you have some other evidence there. In this particular case, there was none. It appeared to me that someone had gone to great lengths to try and hide the identity of the decedent.
The seventh victim is identified as trucker and reserve police officer Walter Antonio. What forensics notice at the crime scene is vital.
We could see indentations on his hands where he had rings that had been removed. We saw an indentation on his wrist where a wristwatch had been removed, but none of those were in the immediate area.
If detectives could locate these missing possessions, they could lead directly to the killer. Police begin an extensive search of Florida's pawn shops in the hope of finding evidence.
$30. Sign here.
But they know time is not on their side.
We realized that the frequency of the homicides was increasing. And we knew we had to act quickly because we didn't want to have anybody else killed.
The police go public with the sketches of the suspects.
It's a subject that seems to horrify and fascinate us at the same time. Another serial killer is in the news. This killer does not fit the typical profile.
It was a tough decision because once you release that, you don't know how the public's going to react, if they're going to panic, if they're going to help, what's going to happen, and you really have to be prepared for it. And at this point, we were prepared to release them.
Within hours of the report, hundreds of tips come flooding in.
There was a sketch of a lady that looked very much like the lady I'd picked up the night before. It said that they suspected there might be a woman going around as a serial killer. And it said, you know, if you've had an encounter with anybody that resembles this person, you know, contact the police. So I told my wife, I said, I should probably give the police a call, and I did.
Ted Teschner is one of many who respond to the appeal for information.
I was heading north on the road and pulled over because I thought at the time that you know, a lady getting picked up by some guy might get hurt. And I thought I was doing a nice thing by picking her up. And I said, well, you know, you're welcome to take a ride in there. She got into the car. She had a bag that she was fidgeting with in her hands. She asked me, you know, do you think I'm a prostitute? And I thought, that's a strange question. I said, no, I just thought you were a lady that was in need of a ride. I wasn't picking her up to get those services, so, you know, she didn't want to stay with me long.
The investigators can now begin to build a profile of the suspects.
The leads coming in were pretty good. You don't always get that lucky.
They point to two women who stay in the Daytona area, who match the description of the eyewitness sketch.
Part of the leads indicated that they had stayed at the Fairview Motel under the name of Cammie Marsh Green in room number 8. We had the Volusia County Sheriff's Office check their pawn records to see if there had been anything pawned in any of these names. And what they found was that Cammie Green had actually pawned a couple of items. We got the pawn tickets from them, and one of those pawn tickets included the items that had been taken from Richard Mallory: a radar detector and a 35mm camera.
Let's fill this out.
Police quickly realize that Cammie Marsh Green is a false name. But the pawn shop has provided detectives with a vital piece of evidence.
All right.
At that time, you were required to put a fingerprint on the pawn ticket. Well, fingerprints don't lie.
Thumbprint here.
The print is rushed to the state's fingerprint lab. Director Jenny Ahern runs it through the automated identification system.
I ran the print numerous times to no avail. I also had a coworker of mine run the print to no avail.
The automated system does not contain every print that the state holds. Ahern prepares to search through the database manually. It's an awesome undertaking.
We really knew we were looking for the needle in a haystack.
The killer is still at large. It looks as though it'll take Ahern and her colleagues weeks to search through hundreds of thousands of records.
We take out a chunk of cards at one time, and you physically, with your bare eye, flip through each card, eliminating prints that are not close. I had only been in the drawer for about 15 minutes. I had taken out one section of the cards. I'm flipping through, looking at each card, one at a time. And within 15 minutes of the first set, I found a card that I felt was close. I could not even breathe because I was so excited about the possibilities of this, that we may actually have found this woman. So I looked at it, looked at my print, looked back at it again, looked back. We knew we were looking for a white female. Turned the card over, it's a white female. I was just beside myself.
They trace the print to a woman whose name is Eileen Wuornos.
Take care.
She had been previously arrested for possession of a .22 caliber 9-shot revolver. So we're thinking, this is definitely a person that we need to take a hard look at.
Investigators need to establish detailed information about the prime suspect.
Hey, baby, how much? Come on.
She traveled in these circles of, drugs and alcohol and prostitution. She seemed to always gravitate back to the Volusia County area. We decided to put some surveillance teams out. It was very much a long shot.
The team begin combing Daytona in the hope of tracking Wuornos down. Mike Joyner is one of the undercover officers trawling the bars, while his colleague, Tom Tittle, is part of the backup squad.
We were essentially divided up into shifts. Myself and a few others were on the midnight shift, so sleep during the day, and at nighttime we would go around the city trying to fill in into the bars, into the low-life areas.
Joyner poses as an out-of-town drugs dealer from Georgia, looking for a good time.
We'd go to a bar and get out and go in and belly up to the bar and kind of drink a beer.
The trail for Wuornos leads them to a notorious biker bar, the Last Resort.
It was pretty unique. The ceiling was made up of bras and women underwear, where they had evidently taken them off and put it in the ceiling, stuck them up in the ceiling with pins and stuff.
Owner Al Boeing confirms that Eileen is a regular at the bar, usually drinking with her lesbian girlfriend, Tyria, who she'd been seeing for nearly a year.
She used to come in with a girlfriend, Ty. They'd come in for a few beers, hang out for a little while, and take a leave, and the next day they'd come back in, then they'd be gone for a few days, and just like anybody else.
But days go by, and neither woman shows up. Detectives discover that Tyria and Eileen have separated, leaving Wuornos broken-hearted. They fear she may have left town.
Finally, one night, I got lucky, and I walked in the bar, and there she was. The investigators had put together as a sketch what she looked like, and there was no doubt the lady I was looking at in that bar right then was Eileen Wuornos.
Want to help me make some money?
No, I'm not interested. Yeah.
Get out of here.
She made it quite clear that she was a lesbian, and she was a streetwalker, and that's how she made her money.
Have detectives finally cornered the killer? State Prosecutor Dave DeMoore knows the stakes are high.
If she were to lose surveillance and go out and kill somebody, can you imagine trying to explain that to a group of journalists Why, knowing that you have the chief suspect, that you were able to lose her and she committed another murder?
Want a drink?
Damn right.
Can Joyner lure the streetwise Wernus into his trap? He needs to secure evidence so police can charge her with murder. If he fails, Wernus walks free and more men could die. With 6 men dead and 1 man, Peter Seams, missing, investigators have tracked down and put their prime suspect, Eileen Wernus, under surveillance at the notorious biker bar, The Last Resort. The stakes couldn't be higher.
My thinking was we found her. We know where she's at. Let's don't lose her. I don't want to be her next victim.
Want a drink?
Damn right.
2, please.
Undercover officer Mike Joyner needs hard evidence, fast, so the state can charge Wernus with murder.
How's it going?
It's going.
If the operation fails, more men could die.
She wants cigarettes, I'll buy her cigarettes. She doesn't have any money.
You want a cigarette?
Yeah.
As Joyner strikes up a rapport with Wernus, his support team wait anxiously nearby.
My group was set up directly across the street from the bar. There was others down the street. And so we had our wire where we could listen to all the conversation that was going on because Mike had the wire on his body.
What are you hanging around for? You're gonna screw or what?
We conferred with the undercover officers too, because they would come and go out of the bar. These 2 guys were excellent undercovers, and I have a great amount of respect for them personally and people who can do that kind of work.
As the investigation closes in on Wernus, the team listening in agonize over what to do next.
My difficulty was that my job would be to get a conviction based upon evidence that I didn't have yet. Effectively, what we had was a lot of circumstances. We could put her in a lot of places, but we couldn't put a gun in her hand.
Is that the key to your hotel room over there? Is that where we're going?
No.
What police want to find is the murder weapon. If Wernus has a .22 caliber gun in her possession, it'll be crucial evidence.
I honestly believed that she had a gun in that bag.
So what you got in the suitcase? A little something sexy for later?
Damn it!
One more, relax. I'll get you another one. I'll get you another one. Relax.
It was starting to get intense because we knew we can't lose her, and of course the safety of the officers was paramount.
I said, we've got to arrest her. We cannot let her leave here on the back of a Harley Davidson.
Do I think I was going to be the next victim? Yes, I sure do now. But if I had a family, and I sure did want to get back to them.
I was ready at the last bar.
The plan is for Joyner to lure Wernus outside, so armed officers can arrest them both, making sure that Joyner's role as an undercover officer is not revealed.
I said, I'm going to go get a motel room. I'm going to bring you the key. You need to go take you a bath because you stink.
You okay? Just stay here, all right?
I said, you stink and I stink. We ain't bathed in 2 or 3 days. I guarantee you now, some of us need some water and soap.
Hey, look what I got. Look what I got. Get your bag. Let's go. Come on. Come on.
Let me get my beer.
Don't get lost. Don't get lost on me here, dog.
Stop! Stop! Police!
What's this about?
Hands behind your head.
What's this all about?
I didn't do anything! I didn't do anything!
They had to put us in the back seat of a patrol car together. And I really jumped on her pretty hard at that point.
What the hell did you do? Why were you in here?
I don't know. I think they think I killed somebody.
Finally, when it was over, it was like a big calm after a hurricane.
Detectives hope to find the murder weapon in Wernus's suitcase. But there's no gun inside.
Now, once you take somebody into custody, there's certain time limits that you can hold them in custody depending on, the type of case. So, the clock was ticking against us.
Police can only charge Wuornos with an outstanding firearms offence from the late 80s. There is real concern that without sufficient proof to charge her with murder, Wuornos could soon be back on the streets.
I think I made it very clear to the investigators that they had jumped the gun, in my opinion, that I was very unhappy with their decision, that I didn't have a case that I could prosecute successfully based upon the evidence as I saw it at that point.
To make a murder case, detectives have to link Wuornos to the crime scenes. Lab analyst Merv Stevens can finally compare the bloody palm print he found in missing man Peter Seam's car with an arrest print taken from Wuornos.
Once I have my photograph of the area, I try to look for identifiers. In this case, this flexion crease that is appearing in the latent left and also in the inked palm print. Then I try to look for the uniqueness, and you can go through and find points of identity in both photographs. And I made a decision that it was her palm print that was left in Peter Sims's vehicle.
But the palm print does not help their case. Police have not found Seam's body. Without his corpse, there's no proof of murder. With time running out, detectives mount a search to track down Tyria Moore, the second female suspect from the witness sketch, and Wuornos' ex-girlfriend.
We didn't know with Tyria Moore how much she was involved at that point either, but we needed to locate her because we felt like that was going to be critical.
Officers tracked Tyria down to her sister's home in Pennsylvania.
I wanted to afford Miss Moore an opportunity not only to help me build my case, but to prove to me that she was not involved. And I felt the best way to do that was to put her in a position to assist us in our investigation and set up a surreptitious phone call between she and Aileen Wuornos where they could converse about what had happened.
Police realized that Tyria could be the key to securing a confession from Wuornos.
The confession was critical to breaking the case. I mean, to actually making it from, well, this is probably the person that did it, to convicting this person.
Tyria agrees to help. Police set a honey trap.
I'm getting scared.
Wow. I definitely don't think there's anything to worry about.
Well, I'm pretty damn worried.
I'm not gonna let you get into trouble.
We were sitting right there listening, and she was very nervous about it and worried about it, and she had feelings for Eileen. You could tell she did.
But I'm not going to jail for something you did. This isn't fair.
Yeah, I don't think she wanted to go to jail for it now. She wasn't that fond of her.
You didn't do anything.
You evidently don't love me anymore. You don't trust me or anything. I mean, you're going to let me get into trouble for something you did.
Listen, quit crying and listen.
I can't help it.
I would die for you.
Would you?
That's the truth. I'd gladly die for you. I'll just wait for you on the other side. I love you. I really do love you. I love you a lot.
I don't know whether I should go on living or just...
I'm not going to let you go to jail. If I have to confess, I will.
Eileen, we have 6 murdered victims. I want to know.
It's make or break time for the case. Despite the damning honey trap call with Tyria, the police still need a full confession from Wuornos to try her for first-degree murder. As Wuornos faces a police interrogation, Public Defender Michael O'Neill reminds his client of her rights.
That's my job as a defense attorney, to protect her interests at that point. I have to try and convince her not to make any statements and not to give any confession about anything, and told her that she had that right to remain silent, and it would be my advice to her to use that right and don't say anything. But no matter what I said, she wouldn't have it.
8 days after her arrest, police finally ask Wuornos the question that proves decisive.
I want to know, was Tyria involved in these killings?
I did the killings. It was me. Go ahead and put me in the electric chair.
Her total focus was on her friend and protecting her friend. She showed absolutely no concern about herself and her own fate.
The police tactic of convincing Eileen of the need to save Tyria from prosecution has paid off.
Had it not been for that connection between her and Ty Moore, and I would give her this as far as some humanity, she was attempting to protect Ty Moore. You can't take that away from her. There is a link of humanity there. That's one of the only decent things that I saw her do.
The more she talked to him, the more I realized that the consequences for her would likely be severe.
Most of the time I was drunk as hell. It really didn't matter. I was a professional hooker. I give him a little shit, you know. Made it real easy to pull the trigger.
Forensic psychologist Dr. Glenn Caddy is shocked by the picture that emerges of Werner's descent into a life of crime and prostitution.
It was clear that this woman had an exceptionally, profoundly impaired history. I know that there was a substantial amount of child sexual abuse to which she was subjected.
Abandoned by her mother and paedophile father, Wernes was brought up by her grandparents. As an escape from the savage beatings from her grandfather, Laurie Wernes, the young Eileen quickly learned to blank out her emotions and use any means by which to gain acceptance.
By age 7 or 8, she was hypersexual. I believe the records indicate that she was called a cigarette pig. And the issues were that she would swap sex by age 8 or 9 for whether it be oral sex on a man or intercourse, for cigarettes, and for money. The whole rearing experience and how she functioned was consistent with really high trauma events in childhood.
At some point in time, I think Aileen had basically said, I've had enough. I'm tired of being taken from. I'm going to take. What more could she take than these men's lives?
Having secured the vital confession, the next priority for detectives is to find evidence to make the prosecution case watertight.
Is there any property that you might have collected from these victims that you stashed somewhere?
Nah. I just flung them out the window as I was driving.
Detectives track down a lockup rented under Werner's alias, Cammie Marsh Green. The harsh truth is revealed. Werner's has hoarded personal possessions stolen from her murdered victims.
A lot of these items were personal to the individual. They were briefcases, they were watches, they were rings.
It may have been souvenirs, or it may have been a further attempt to try and hide the identities of the victims. And we were actually able to tick off items and establish what belonged to which victim.
For police, this is vital evidence. For victims' families, a reminder of their loved ones.
We have some hair here.
Among the items is a hairbrush.
Bag that.
Peter Seames's son is asked to identify it.
He kind of lifted it up in front of him, and his voice started to quiver. And he said, my father used to brush my hair when I was a child with this brush. And I remember the tears welling up in my eyes, and I was just about to cry. To this day, that image of that boy remembering his father brushing his hair with that hairbrush brings tears to my eyes.
Get out of the car! What are you doing? What are you doing?
Police have a confession. They have evidence to link Werner's to the victims.